Honey, you don't want to go in there all by yourself, do you? It's dark and it's lonely in there.
It was filmed in Kansas in the early 60s. Over the years, it has become a cult classic. With its remarkable revival in 1989, it is now being hailed as the movie that wouldn't die.
Hey, you want to drag, huh?
This is how a clever little horror movie begins. The movie is Carnival of Souls, and it was filmed in early 1962 in Lawrence, Kansas. The producer-director was Herk Harvey. The writer was John Clifford. It all started here at the Kansas River and in the active imagination of Mr. Harvey.
As I told you, I went on vacation, and coming back from Los Angeles, I saw this place, Salt Air, which is located just outside of Salt Lake. It's very Russian Arabesque in architecture, and I saw it at sunset, and it was the weirdest looking thing I'd ever seen. So I stopped the car and walked about a half mile to take a look at it, and noticed it was deserted. Quite a ways now from the lake, because Salt Lake had gone down, and so the lake is sitting, the amusement park is sitting away from the lake. So I came back and talked to John, showed him a couple of the pictures that I took when I was there, and said, you know, it's a great location. We ought to figure out something to do with that. So John, in his usual way of being inventive, comes up with Carnival of Souls.
The nice thing about working with Herk is that over the years, if you come up with something difficult, he always says, well, you write the way you think it ought to be, and I'll get it shot.
Or try to.
Right. So, you know, writers appreciate that. He lets me do the writing, and I stay out of his directing.
How did you raise the money for the project?
Talked to a couple of local investors who then talked to other people, and the sum of $13,000 was raised over a weekend, which I thought was really pretty amazing, because in those days, that was a fairly good sum. Although the idea of doing a 35mm feature film for $13,000 cash is a little staggering even then. But we did get the money and decided, yes, we can do it, and started shooting the film.
3 hours. Yeah, not sure I want to find that car now. There's sand, and with that current, we may never find it.
The central character in the film, Mary Henry, is the sole survivor of a car wreck in the Kansas River. She keeps seeing an eerie, white-faced character known only as the Man. He was played in the film by Herk Harvey.
Another time, I had just finished putting on the makeup for the Man, and was sitting there looking rather ghoulish, and 2 boys that were going from school and decided to come by, walked by. I stood up and looked at them, never said a word, and both of them took off. So I don't know what their impression was of what happened there.
The majority of the film was shot in and around Lawrence. But the centerpiece of the film, the Salt Air Amusement Park, was located in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Several interesting things happened there. We didn't have enough lights to light the whole pavilion. It was actually the largest dance hall between Chicago and California. And we finally managed, through a local electrician, to hook up from outside and found out the lights in the place still worked, and those plus our own lights allowed us to go ahead and film the big ballroom sequence. But an interesting thing happened. The people around the lake, that thing hadn't been lit for years. And the people around the lake all of a sudden started calling the police saying, "What's going on at Salt Air? What's happening?" And the police didn't even know, of course, what was going on at Salt Air. So they came out to find out, but all worked well.
The film itself, with its ideas of the dead haunting and pursuing the living, has inspired many imitations, as well as much discussion among film fans.
Rather than shocking people with gore, it sort of fascinates people with all the great ideas that are in the film.
I'm not as big a fan of the film as a lot of people are. I mean, I think technically it's very beautiful. It's a wonderfully photographed film. I think the pace is a little laborsome in some spots, and it kind of drags, and it's a little hokey in some other areas, but I like the film overall very much, but I don't think it ranks as among one of my favorite films of all time.
For the opening sequence in the film, Harvey used the Lecompton Bridge near Lawrence and encountered one of his highest production expenses.
But they said you will have to pay for repairing the bridge. So after we wrecked the car through the bridge railing and all, when we left that day, we had to get the car out of the river. We got the car out on the first hookup, and then on the way back, I watched the men repairing it, and later I got a bill for $12 for repairing the bridge, which of course would be a little different today.
John Clifford and Herk Harvey worked for years in industrial filmmaking at Centron Films, a firm in Lawrence.
Kansas.
Have you ever been there?
No, Aunt Emily always visited the family here.
This early Kansas promotional film was directed by Harvey, who also had a major part.
What started out as a director and remained a director for 35 years at Centron. The interesting thing about it was that with each project, of course, the nature of the job changed because we were making educationals, industrials. That included a variety of subjects, and also in some of the industrials we got into musicals and extensive travel and this sort of thing. So the job itself was very interesting in that it was always different.
I think I probably had to use everything I knew about technique and dramatization and everything to keep these subjects interesting.
Herk and John have retired from Centron, but Carnival of Souls, their own independent production, still haunts this affable duo.
Well, all I've said about Carnival of Souls is it's a heck of a note when a film that has failed financially is your total breadth of success in the feature film market.
The movie has been described by critics as an overlooked gem that shows what imagination and enterprise can accomplish with meager financing. After the film was completed, it was premiered in Lawrence at the Granada Theater in September 1962. Reaction to the film was mixed.
It's a peculiar thing when you're local and you make a film, and local people come to see it. They come to see if you made a film like Hollywood would make. You know, if we had made a grade C Hollywood type film, they'd say, "Oh, good, you know, they know how to make a Hollywood type." Never occurs to them you might have done something original. Out on the West Coast, we got a lot of comment out there about, they called us a real jewel of a little independent film. We've had directors out there say at that time it was the best low-budget independent film they'd ever seen.
Despite the fact it has been acclaimed in numerous publications, including being featured in a recent book showcasing great films of the 60s and 70s, Carnival of Souls has always been a thorn in the side of its creators.
And a friend of ours who used to work for Calvin Company in Kansas City was then working for General Labs, and he said a new distribution company had just been formed called Hertz Lion. It was a publicly held company and should be a very good one because they had a considerable amount of money. So in talking to those people, they seemed anxious to get the film. They had received others from Texas and around the country and had purchased 3 comedies from England. So it sounded like a good deal. So we went with Hertz Lion. We got glowing reports to start with. I went to South America on another film, and when I came back, it was obvious that they owed us considerable money but hadn't paid us a cent. When I started investigating, I got no replies, and the next thing I knew, the president of the company had gone to Europe, and the funds were gone with him.
When Carnival of Souls was first released by Hertz Lion in 1962 as part of a double feature with The Devil's Messenger, it was shortened to 75 minutes to allow for more showings. Herk Harvey's original cut of the film had been 84 minutes. But a longer version of the film might have existed had it not been for a processing error which destroyed one reel of the movie.
We lost a roll of film that was, I think, very critical. And that was just before the dance. We had this long shot. It was a great evening at Salt Lake. And they have all of these pilings out in the water, just lone pilings. And I had people in dark costumes behind the pilings. And then on cue, it's as though the pilings start to move, but all these people start towards the pavilion. And then we had scenes, you know, of hands coming up on the pavilion and faces. And this is the first time you see these people. In the processing, they simply overexposed it and it was gone. Of course, that was about 8 minutes of film, but it's one of those things that you'd like to have had. It wasn't, the nice thing is it wasn't sync sound, it wasn't critical for the exposition of the film, but...
The shortened version of Carnival of Souls left out several brief but important scenes, including shots of Mary Henry being menaced by the dancing zombies at the end of the film. It is this short version that has been circulating for the past 2 decades, because the film resurfaced and developed a cult following due to its numerous showings on late-night television.
Even from the beginning, the distributor never knew what to do with the film. He put it out as a double feature in drive-ins and so forth. And it wasn't until the film sold to Europe and played in Europe, as over there it suddenly began playing in downtown art houses.
For the past few years, it was hard to find Carnival of Souls on your local TV station or at your local video store. But things are changing. In fact, the future for this little film has never looked brighter. However, the future for Mary Henry wasn't so bright. You see, she died in that car wreck in the Kansas River. That's when she joined the Carnival of Souls. The future for Carnival of Souls changed in early 1989 when a new distributor for the film, Panorama Entertainment, started re-releasing the movie to theaters and film festivals. The film festivals were in Dallas, Boston, New York, and other cities. Critical response to the film this time around was ecstatic. Glowing reviews appeared in Rolling Stone, The New Yorker, The Chicago Tribune, and others. TV stories appeared on Entertainment Tonight, MTV, and Siskel and Ebert. Herk Harvey and John Clifford were also honored with Life Achievement Awards by the Kansas Film Institute.
I really appreciate this particular award because it's from people, it's from the Kansas Film Institute, first of all, from Kansans, from people in Lawrence, and they say, we know you, and we thank you, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Both Herk Harvey and John Clifford were delighted and surprised at the revival of Carnival of Souls.
Yeah, like I had a chance last year to go back and be on a symposium on horror films in New York. And it was interesting, the number of people there who had seen the film and had... But the interesting thing is when you get on those, then they start saying, now, did you really intend to do this and this? Which, as John said, we intended just to make a good horror film and one that had some pizzazz to it. And a lot of these things we really didn't consider. But it's nice to have them consider it now because it seems to have much more depth than we ever gave it, probably.
That's right. They're asking us what we were thinking about, what we were doing 25 years ago, and they're talking to a couple of guys who can hardly remember what they were doing last week.